Good afternoon, everyone. It's New Jersey Garden. Today I figured I would do another garden tour. It's July 2nd, 2019, and I have a lot of things blooming in the garden. This is a knockout rose, and I do get little holes in the leaves. I have some kind of insect chewing on the leaves. There's a spray out there that I've used on I work in someone else's garden once a week, and I use a spray called Dr. Earth's insect spray. I don't know if anyone out there has any comments on whether it works or not, but I have used it and it does seem to help with pests that are chewing on leaves. I just haven't used it in my own garden. But I don't really want to use any chemicals, so I look for organic alternatives whenever I can. But this is a knockout rose, and it bloomed about 3 weeks ago, and I pruned it and now it's blooming again. So it will bloom periodically through the whole summer. I have a lot of daylilies, and I have to deadhead the daylilies. I take off the spent blooms, and then when the stalks turn brown, I pull those up, and that will encourage new growth. So these all need to be deadheaded. I have a lot of lilies. This is an Asiatic lily. I had a lot more over the last couple weeks. It's the last of the Asiatic lily. This type of daylily is called Happy Returns. And then back here I have an herb called anise hyssop, and I have seen a hummingbird on this plant, and a lot of bees enjoy it as well. It will spread everywhere through the garden though. The great thing is it is deer resistant, and it does attract a lot of pollinators, but it is definitely a spreader. Then I have some California poppies down here, along with another type of daylily called Stella Doro, and this one is a more orangey color. Over here I have another daylily, and if anyone knows the name of this lily, I would love to know. I did spray it with deer repellent, which is why you see the white on the leaves. I use something called deer stopper because my lilies will get eaten by the deer if I don't spray. But this lily just came into bloom last week. Over here by the garage I have a bed of just the Stella Doro daylilies, and I have to deadhead these, and like I was saying before, I just pull off these spent blooms and I pull out these browning stalks, and new growth will appear in a few days. So you can really have your daylilies blooming all summer if you deadhead. Over here I have Maltese Cross, which is a great perennial. It's pest resistant and deer resistant. It has really interesting bright red flowers, and it's about 3.5 feet tall. It will flop a little bit. It's at the end of its bloom. Then I have yarrow over here, which hasn't bloomed yet. Some lady's mantle. More daylilies, and then I have a lot of daisies in this garden bed. There's some daisies there that haven't bloomed yet. And this is called Catman. It's Walker's Low. And as you can see, the bumblebees really love it. This is also deer resistant. I have a lot of plants that are deer resistant in my garden because I have a big problem with deer. This is lady's mantle. This plant down here bloomed a little while ago. It's called Basket of Gold Alyssum. Then over here is lavender. I believe this is an English variety. It's really fragrant. And again, the bumblebees really love it. I prune my lavender after it blooms, and I get another bloom in August. There's some more ladies' mantle. And then here are some daisies, and these daisies are called Shasta daisies, and they're the Alaska variety. It's the tallest of the Shasta daisies. This plant here behind the daisy, or in front of the daisies, is an oriental lily that hasn't bloomed yet. I have some catmint scattered in this garden bed. And then here's a really nice red yarrow. Yarrow is great for dry spots. The deer won't touch it. And here is a Shirley poppy. This is what the buds look like before they bloom. They're kind of like hanging down. And then this is one that's in full bloom right now. I had some pinkish ones as well. And then after they bloom, they make really interesting seed pods. Trying to zoom in. Over here is another yarrow. This has some more hot pink tones. Yarrow is very easy to grow. I grew these from seed. And I like yarrow because it doesn't really spread too much in the garden. It stays put. Over here, this is a crepe myrtle. I believe it's the, I want to say Zuni variety, something like that. It's tolerant to zone 6, but we had a really rough, cold winter and it didn't do so great. I had to cut off a lot of the upper limbs because it died off at the top, but it's coming back. I have a lot of brown-eyed Susan plants in this garden bed, and just recently I had sprayed the garden for deer, and I guess I forgot to spray some of the brown-eyed Susan plants because, as you can see, they all got chewed off. That's okay because I'll spray them and then I'll just have even more blooms when they finally do bloom, but a lot of my brown-eyed Susan plants got nibbled on. A nice perennial that will not be touched by deer, that's a pollinator favorite, is called Liatris, and it has these really nice spiky blooms that start blooming from the top and they work their way down. And I have a lot of that in the garden because it is so easy to grow and it's pest resistant. I grew these from bulbs and they bloomed even in the first year. Here is some more Liatris that's starting to bloom. And I'll do another garden tour in a couple weeks so you can see it in full bloom. And over here I have a really beautiful yarrow. I really like this pink one. Yarrow comes in all different shades. And then behind the yarrow I just have more Liatris and some daylilies. There's another yarrow over here that's like a really pale pink. And then this one over here has a lot of yellow in it. This is a coreopsis. Lots of bumblebees today. And this is our mailbox, and we have a clematis growing up it, and it used to bloom every year, and it was partially damaged because we had a new mailbox installed after a winter storm, so I'm not sure why it's not blooming, but I do remember the first year it didn't bloom, so maybe it just, because it had to start all over again, it's just not blooming. It just had to start over this spring with just little stalks at the base. Normally I don't cut it back, and it is kind of, you know, the stalks are a lot longer when they start out in the spring. Here's another example of Liatris. It's a pretty tall plant. And then these are just the peonies that I just cut back. I just cut off all the seed pods, and they look nice all summer long, just like that. I showed these in my other garden tour, but these are still in bloom. These are called California poppies. And I had moved my bachelor buttons back here. They were in my vegetable garden bed, and I just moved them into this space here. But I just wanted to show you that California poppies are still doing great. And then we'll take a look at the vegetable garden and see what's growing there. So this is the vegetable garden. I started this last year as a garden just for some annual flowers that I was growing. And I mulched this recently just to help control the weeds. It's not a raised garden bed. I would prefer that. Maybe next year I'll do raised beds. So the soil has not been conditioned, and the vegetables are growing fine. They're just a little bit slow, but I've been fertilizing them with my fish emulsion, Alaska fish food. And I have some of the plants a little close together, so I'm learning as I go. I'm definitely still a newbie with the vegetables. I have grown some vegetables before in prior years, but this is my first year growing cucumbers, and I have them staked up on these poles. I use this Velcro tie to tie them up, as you can see, and I've been using just the special twine to add additional, you know, lattice work for the vines to crawl up, and they're not really crawling up on the pink twine. They're definitely growing up though, and they're growing really fast. I have a cucumber I wanted to show you down here. There's a little one down at the bottom, and then I want to show a couple other cucumbers. Let me walk in here. The deer managed to get through some of this fencing. As I mentioned, the fencing is just fishing line, and I saw this in another YouTube video a couple years ago where it will keep out deer. However, I think they broke through some of the strands. They managed to nibble all the sunflowers in the back, but they haven't touched the vegetables, so I'm happy that they haven't touched the vegetables, but they managed to get the heads through and eat these sunflowers back here. But I have a bunch of tomato plants, cucumbers, and some winter squash in here, so I'll show you some more cucumbers. Here's another cucumber. Now these are Ukrainian slicing cucumbers. I got these seeds from Hudson Valley Seed Company, and I'm just going to try them out this year. They're supposed to stay bitter free even in heat spells, so we'll try the taste out and see, you know, how they do. It's supposed to grow about 8 inches, so I might pick this tomorrow or the next day, because I think it's only about 5 inches right now. Here is another cucumber, and this is closer to probably 6 inches. I may wait till tomorrow to pick it. I have a few Swiss chard plants, and I love Swiss chard because you can pick the leaves all summer and they just keep growing. So I have, I think, 6 Swiss chard plants. I just have 3 strawberry plants. I have harvested a few strawberries from them. I feel like I have a lot to learn in terms of strawberry growing. So I just got 3 plants. I purchased these plants. If any viewers out there have any suggestions on the strawberries, I'd love to hear. I don't know what to do with the runners, if I'm supposed to, you know, how I'm supposed to deal with the strawberries for next year. So this is some winter squash that I have planted. I planted acorn squash and spaghetti squash. I believe the ones right here, these three, are acorn squash. And then these smaller ones back here are the spaghetti squash. I have read that spaghetti squash can get really big, so I don't know if I have these spaced too close together. I probably do, but I'll learn. There's been a lot of male flowers. There hasn't been too many female flowers, so haven't seen any fruit developing yet. And then I have 7 tomato plants, and I have those staked on poles as well, and I use the Velcro ties. And I tried to get just one main vine growing up, but a lot of them, they just grew pretty fast over the last 2 weeks with the warmer weather, and a lot of the vines split into, you know, 2. So I'm trying to limit it to 2 main vines now, 2 main stalks rather. And I'm trying to pinch out those suckers like I showed in my other video. So I have a lot of flowers, and on the deck I have a little raised planter, and I have 4 tomatoes so far growing on the deck, and I can just show you that quickly. But here on my deck I have a little raised, a little planter, and I've got 4 tomatoes growing on 2 tomato plants, and they're really close together, and I wouldn't recommend it. I just tried to fit them into this planter, but as you can see, some of the bottom leaves are yellowed, and I think that's because they were touching each other. And I tried to remove some lower leaves, but I've noticed that my tomato plants that are in the ground are a lot healthier looking than the ones in the planter because they have more space. And there is a diluted hydrogen peroxide solution that I can spray on these. I think I use 2 tablespoons per, I want to say 28 ounces. I'm using a spray bottle that I believe is 28 ounces. So I put a couple tablespoons of hydrogen peroxide in water and spray the lower leaves. I've done that before so I need to do that. I need to do that this year because I'm getting some yellowing at the bottom. And then I have a few cucumber plants in here that I've just staked up, but no cucumbers yet. And then the Swiss chard, as I mentioned, there's a little Swiss chard in here that's doing great. And the bok choy I have to pull. It bolted. I planted it too late and it bolted. So that's the situation there for the vegetables. There's a little trick I learned from M.I. Gardener. It's a YouTube channel. The male and female parts are on the same flower in tomato plants. So one way to pollinate them without waiting for bees to come around is you just tap your flower a little bit just to vibrate the flower, and that will help pollinate your tomatoes. I've done this before and it worked out really well, so I'm going to do that this year. So every time I see flowers, I just tap the flower a little bit for about 10 seconds, 10 to 20 seconds, and that just helps pollinate the flower to get more tomatoes. We do have a lot of bumblebees, but I haven't seen a lot of bees near the tomatoes, so I think that will really help generate more tomatoes if I do that. I hope that you enjoy watching this video and have a great week. Thank you so much.